Hi, I'm Bill Kristol. Welcome back to Conversations. I'm very pleased to be joined today, what is today, July 12th, by my friend Joe Trippi, one of the, in my opinion, the most successful, but more importantly, perhaps most thoughtful and insightful Democratic political strategists, practicing political strategy. Joe, we've had three conversations. In March 2019, Joe predicted that Joe Biden would be the Democratic nominee in 2020, which was against the conventional wisdom, certainly the sophisticated conventional wisdom, which gave Biden a very low chance. In July of that was March 2019. In July of 2020, then, Joe thought Biden would defeat Trump, but you were a little worried about the Democratic Party as a whole, which I think was vindicated. We didn't get into it in detail by the down ballot results in 2020. And then we had a conversation a little less than a year ago, the fall of 2021, where you were worried about the Democrats not rallying in a way behind the president and not being a mature, I think is the word you used, or adult governing party. So I think I think those three all stand up well, and I want to follow up on them today with really discussing two things. What's going to happen in 2022, where you have a somewhat contrarian view, which I happen to agree with, so of course it must be correct, and also what about and then to come back to the Democratic Party more broadly. So, Joe, thanks for joining me again.
Great to be with you, Bill.
So, and incidentally, the most recent articulation of your concerns for the Democratic Party, which we'll come back maybe to it later in the show today, was on your excellent podcast, That Trippi Show podcast, which is available on all major podcast platforms. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Thanks. Thanks, Bill.
So you should listen to that too. Okay, so let's talk 2022 conventional wisdom. Not unreasonably, I guess, based on history, is first-year midterms are bad for a party if the president's approval for the party in the White House, especially if it controls Congress also. It's responsible for governing, gets blamed for everything that doesn't go as well as it should. And if the president's approval rating is low, that drags the party down. And therefore, and you just have seen this for months in the conventional reporting, 2022 is likely to be a blowout, a tsunami, a disaster for the Democrats. And I've really struck how many people have just taken that as kind of the baseline. So talk about that. Is that you have, I think, a somewhat contrarian view? So why are you doubtful about that?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's historically been true, right? And so, there's in a lot of ways, it doesn't really matter for a lot of the pundits and sort of folks that focus on this or write about it, what the real data at the moment is. They've got all this historic data that says, hey, you're going to get blown out. It always happens in the midterm. But I keep thinking, I mean, that's because it's in most midterms, or in fact, it's a referendum on the president and the party and the majority. And if that's the case, yes, it's easy to see why, if this is a referendum on Joe Biden, with his approval ratings where they are, it would be easy to say, oh, we're going to see this again. But there's a bunch of data that doesn't hold up. Fetterman is ahead of the 7 Senate races that matter the most this year. A Republican is not ahead in any of them. Democrats are ahead, Fetterman ahead in Pennsylvania. Ryan is even ahead of J.D. Vance in Ohio by 3 or 4 points. Herschel Walker is losing to Warnock. I mean, by the way, there are several that are dead heat kind of situations, but there's no Republican with a lead. Well, how is that possible if there's this big red wave tsunami coming because Joe Biden's numbers are 33, 34, 35%. They are there right now, and Democrats are doing fine. It doesn't mean we'll win all of them, but I think it doesn't point to this red wave tsunami. I think this could turn out to be like the red mirage of 2020. This red wave is going to turn into that mirage, in my view. And here's sort of historically, the history I look at is generally when a party puts up extreme nominees, it breaks that wave. It breaks the referendum thing. And the best one, a really clear example would be 2010 with Obama. It was definitely a referendum on Obama's in midterm on Obama, and Democrats writ large lost all over the place, right? But where O'Donnell in Delaware, Sharon Angle, I think it was in Nevada. You can correct me on if I get.
I can't remember which year was which. There was, some of them were 2010, some were 2012. Angle, Murdoch in Indiana.
Yeah,
but certainly O'Donnell was the case in Delaware. Yeah,
Delaware, legitimate rape candidate in Missouri, I think it was.
Right.
I'm getting my years a little mixed up sometimes too, but definitely in that midterm where the party Republicans nominated sort of extreme. At that point, Tea Party candidates, that they lost no matter how big the wave was, the referendum on Obama. What I would point to is that I've never seen a party nominate more extreme candidates almost across the board as the Republicans have in 2022, and as they seem to be continuing to do. And I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing Warnock ahead of Herschel Walker, Fetterman ahead of Oz, et cetera. The reason these things are much more competitive, given President Biden's ratings, are because of two things. I mean, mostly the extreme. A lot of it being it's now a choice in these races between an extreme MAGA, in many cases, candidate, and that's different than that. The referendum could literally be on the extreme nature of the Republican Party, and not a referendum on Biden. Both those things will be playing out, but I think writ large, the reason this is not going to play out the same way is because of, in large part, the kind of what's happened to the Republican Party, how extreme it's gotten. The other thing that I think has happened, you look at redistricting this year, it was supposed to be another banner year for Republicans to draw new Republican districts. There was an edge, but not as big as anybody thought, and it turned out part of the reason was they had done such a great job of drawing lines in 2010 in that reapportionment that there weren't any new districts really to draw. You can't, Alabama is already down to only one Democratic district. You couldn't erase that one out. And so all these sort of things that the conventional wisdom was saying, one, that they would have an edge on redistricting. They had a slight one, but not anywhere near as big as people thought. The extreme nature of the candidates that have won and they continue to nominate, and then of course with Roe v. Wade and the court recently, the other thing we've seen all through most of this cycle, Republicans declared that they were much more interested in this election than Democrats did. That's changed significantly in the last 2 weeks. For the first time this cycle, Democrats have surged ahead in interest in the outcome of the election than Republicans, which is like not a usual thing at all. So, and again, this is the same thing. If 92% of Democrats are interested in this election, despite the fact that they give Joe Biden a relatively low 70% approval rating, it just says to me that it's not going to end up being a referendum on Biden. It's going to be a choice election between the nominees that are sitting in these two, in each district, in each state.
Yeah, interesting. So Republican extremism, in a way, could trump the Biden disapproval, you might say, at least. Yeah. Now, so I guess two.
Well, Biden's not on the ballot.
Right, and so two kind of, not counter arguments, but let's say the intelligent, I'd say the sophisticated response to what you said, which is, I happen to agree with a lot, is one's a question, really. Are you just talking about Senate and governor races can decouple more easily from a national mood, as we saw in 2010 and 2012, especially in 2010, than congressional races. So how much does your analysis apply to the House? You get a wave in the House, but not in the Senate, and or governorships. And the second, I guess, question or argument is, I guess I put it this way, well, let me ask you that question first, and then let me say the second thing first too, which is the version I've been sort of using of your argument, which I think you said very well, is, if it's such a wave, how come the generic congressional ballot is like 1 or 2 points pro-Republican? Now, when the approval is like minus 15 or 20, and those are in the same polls. That's right. Apples to apples. Those are the same voters. Something exactly. Like the math I did recently, like back of the envelope, was like 10% of the electorate, not of Democrats, but of the electorate now, looks like it's disapproving of Biden but intending to vote Democratic or open to voting Democratic in 2022. That's a very big number. Yeah. And it does show that voters can presumably hold in their mind at the same time, not crazy about Biden and the Democrats, but man, here in Pennsylvania or here in Ohio perhaps, or Missouri, if Greitens is the nominee, I could still vote for a Democrat for office, or Michigan for governor or something like that. So I guess the question is, now the sophisticated answer to that, though, and this is the second point, that is, well, but at the end of the day, that the reason a wave is that you don't see it at the beginning, you don't see it in July, you see it in September. Right. It could break late, and you might be correct about the current moment, but isn't the wave going to hit later and drag everyone under? So those two questions: how much is this a House? How much of what you're characterizing doesn't apply to the House races? A, and B, what likelihood is there of a late wave that swamps your current analysis?
Well, I mean, two things, Bill, I'd say is one, I think we're not as aware today as to how extreme a lot of the House candidates that they've nominated are. I mean, they were literally QAnon. I mean, literally people who are proudly declaring that they're QAnon are the nominee. We know who Herschel Walker is. I mean, because the media is focused on, as you said, the Senate and governors, some of those high-profile races. But I think that we're going to be shocked. The people are going to be shocked in their district when they realize who the Republicans have nominated, and I think that's and I don't think you're seeing that yet, because we haven't gotten to that point where people are turning and really paying attention to this. The second thing I'd say is that remember what happened in 2020. In 2020, Biden won, but Democrats took pretty tough medicine in some of these House districts, the marginal House districts. We lost a lot of places. I think a lot of those are places we would likely lose in this midterm. In other words, we've already washed out. When you get to these 60 seats that you're going to lose in a big wave, and I think part of that reason too that happened in 2020 was you can take it all back to the way reapportionment and redistricting happened in 2010. These districts are pretty red and pretty blue now. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of. We're not going to lose the blue districts. They're not going to lose the red. The Republicans aren't going to lose the red districts. And there aren't that many truly marginal districts left. I mean, there's not 60 of them. There's just not going to happen. Yeah,
polarization plus redistricting really has narrowed the field. And then if you lose, they gained 40 seats to Dems in 2018 in a pretty wave-like election, you'd say. Then they lost 13, I think, of them back in 2020, in effect.
But this is when they're supposed to.
So they've already lost. I mean, you could say they've sort of lost already a chunk of what they would normally lose in that first off year, which usually comes after you gain seats in 2008 with Obama and the Democrats. Yeah, so that still mean they lose 10 or 15 House seats and lose the House, but I mean it's not not 25, not 25 or 40 presumably.
Right. I mean my view right now of how I see this going is that I think I would fervently expect and pound the table on Democrats gaining seats in the Senate. I mean, people can, we can argue it out, but I can go through race by race why I think that. And then in the House, I think the chances of Democrats holding the House are far higher than the punditry and and conventional wisdom and sort of historic trends would suggest. I by no means is it gonna, oh yeah, it's gonna absolutely happen all the House. No, I think it's gonna be much closer than people think. We could lose it by 10 seats. We could hold it by 5 or 10 seats. 5 seats. I don't think we'll get the 10. But I'm saying, but I think it'll be in that kind of a range. It won't be one of these. What I'm saying is I just don't agree with it all. Is this the notion of the big red tsunami wave, cascading across the country and taking out, the kind of 40 seat or so. I don't even think 25. I mean, I just think it's going to be very, very tight because of the polarization, because of the points you just made. Polarization, the fact that the districts are so tightly drawn anyway, and now have been, kind of retightened with this one. So I don't really see that kind of movement caused by that. And then you have they are nominating people in some of these seats. People are going to realize that make Marjorie Taylor Greene look sane, and I think that's going to have an impact on them. And by the way, I still don't think the Democrats. We have a couple of places where we've had a big party fight or something, and somebody got through that could lose it in a general, but like 2018, for the most part, again, not in everyone, but for the most part, our candidates are pretty solid that have gotten recruited and nominated in this cycle, much like I think 2018.
And when I talk to some Republicans, and I say, well, look, it's generic ballots, like +1 here, +1.5. Doesn't look to me like some massive blowout. Well, wait till we really go up in the air in September with the ads on inflation and so forth. And there's some truth probably on that. They can accentuate the failures or apparent failures of the Biden administration in that and other respects, or of some of the radicalism of some Democrats, and try to hang that around the rest of the Democratic Party's neck like they did with police in 2020. Now, I suppose the question is how much of that's already built in, how much of that's already, or the market, so to speak, is discounted by the markets, and how much will Democratic highlighting of Republican extremism counteract that? I guess what I'm asking is sort of what's outstanding in your view? Which way does new information tend to cut now for the next 4 months? Well,
I'd argue I don't think that Biden's approval ratings going lower than it is. I'm not sure it's possible. It could get a little better between now and November, depending on gas prices are getting a little lower. I mean, we'll see how all that plays out. But I don't think things are. I don't see I think it's all what's changing. I think are two things that are likely to change or increase over time between now and the election. Is I think because of the hearings, the January 6th Select Committee hearings, there's become a better understanding of just how extreme and what the consequences might be for the extreme MAGA kind of candidates that they're nominating this year. And I think that's going to increase between, I think not just the committee, but, whether legal things happen, we don't know any of that. But I just think that's likely to continue. Trump, the division where one of his candidates has gotten the endorsement and lost or won, but beat a reasonable Republican, whatever you want to call them. I think that schism is also going to be clear. I think. I mean, it's going to be a problem. Some people may not turn out, depending on the Republican side, because of that schism. And then I think the other thing, obviously, I think that's again highlighted the extreme view is what the court has recently done. So, I mean, the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. I mean, I think had there been some middle ground, maybe where Roberts wanted to go, I mean, maybe it wouldn't have become what it's become in terms of activating and also highlighting how extreme, and also different states' reactions to it and the laws they're trying to pass now, again highlighting how extreme these things can go. I think that I really do believe, if you look through history, when a party's gone too far off the rails, that's sort of become the referendum, not the referendum on the current, the other party, the president or whatever. And I think, by the way, Democrats have been guilty of that in the past as well. But I think I think it's likelier that the extreme element, by the way, just like Democrats, we can't, you can't go out and say, hey, please, one wing of the party, please be quiet for a while. It's just not going to happen. And the same thing. So you can't, it's not going to quiet down. The loudest extreme voices in the Republican Party are not going to get quiet here. I think they're going to get louder. And I do think the stakes are so high with our democracy. It's not, I've said this many times, it's not right versus left. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. I think this election is democracy versus this authoritarian MAGA extremism that we're seeing. I think more and more people are going to come to that view. If you look at the data, in terms of how people are answering questions about how they perceive each party, they see the Republican Party as more extreme. They see it as, they're now starting, to say it's more immoral or amoral, excuse me. There's, when you look at what words people are using to describe that party right now, I think that's increasing. And so I think that's part of the thing that makes me think, when you get down in these districts and people understand who each party's nominated, that in the end, anybody who looks to be and this would be the same if we nominate an extreme lefty in a district. I think it's where the most extreme element is the one that's going to lose in most of these marginal places, most of the districts, and because of all these other things that are happening that have made that the focal point, will have made that the focal point by November. I also think, like, inflation, I used to think, gosh, it's really got to go down between now and November. I think if it doesn't increase, if it just starts to sort of, like we've seen gas prices slowly just start to, last 28 days have gone down, not significantly, but have gone down, that it may not be as salient as it is today. And with what the court is doing, with what different candidates out there. One thing about 2010 was how the rest of the Republican Party had to run away from legitimate rape, and some of in a lot of ways, the way Democrats had to got hit with critical race theory. It's hard. We couldn't run. You can't run away from somebody saying defund the police. It's just tough. I did it. Doug Jones' race in 2020 in Alabama. We won in 2017, and then somebody starts talking defund the police, and you couldn't talk to in Alabama. We were done the second that one hit. I think you're going to have more of that again happen on the right this time, yeah, because of things Marjorie Taylor Greene or Greitens or. It's just so many of them, it's going to be impossible to avoid, I think.
And I guess, though you'd agree, obviously, if you could wish for an extraneous variable, it would be that inflation subsides some,
sure,
and people feel less agitated about it. That is probably the biggest burden, don't you think, on Biden and the Democrats?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've said this before. Jobs. I created more jobs, and just like the last quarter, I think created 1 million new jobs, and the first time that's ever happened, particularly after a whole year of the jobs that were created. Yeah, people coming back from COVID. But not the last quarter, man. That far exceeded anything that's ever happened historically. My view of that is, look, the problem there is, okay, so let's say we create 15 million jobs. Well, there's 15 million people who are happy they have jobs. And the other 130 million working folks out there are happy to hear that other people got jobs. But all 155 million of them go to get their gas tank filled up and see, $5, $4.98 gas. So that impacts everybody, and they're not happy about it. Frankly, the other side of this, and this is where I really think, and we'll see whether my faith in the American people is, just completely off. But no, but I think that, look, deep down, everybody out there, I think, yes, look, we've had 2 years of the most disruptive time in our lives, right? Who would be happy about anything that's happened over the last two years, 2.5 years? I mean, forget the 6 years with Trump and everything. I'm talking about just the last two. Why would anybody think, oh, this is great? Well, when you don't think things are great, who do you blame? President, got it. That's why his numbers are low. But in the end, I think deep down the American people know we've had 2 years of COVID. That had something to do with this. We've got Russia invading Ukraine. That's had something to do with this. Yeah, maybe some of his policies made it. But deep down, I don't think people, the majority of people don't dislike Joe Biden. They may dislike a policy. They may think he's too old, but thinking somebody's too old is different than whatever. I mean, I just think he's not I really deep down think in the end, when people go into the booth, he's not on the ballot. This is going to come down to Dr. Oz and Fetterman, or whoever the two candidates are in the district.
And to Trump, I mean, in a way, it's a 2024 problem, perhaps, for Biden.
Right.
If he's too old and if he's not personally impressive, let's just say, to voters, at this point. But I agree, maybe even 2022, what you're saying is, and it seems to have a certain common sense to it, that he's, in a way, not polarizing enough to really get people to sort of think, I've got to dump Abigail Spanberger because of Biden. It's like, well, really?
Right.
It's not quite like with Obama. It's different. You get a huge vote on Obamacare 3-4 months before the election. Of course, it's going to be a referendum on Obama and Obamacare. You can't really walk away from that. It's not really anything quite comparable for Biden, except for the, I think, inflation, if that is subsiding. But I mean, one thing you've commented on elsewhere, I think that people aren't really factoring in is, in terms of the Republican image. I mean, there's a reasonable chance. Do you think it's better than 50-50 maybe that Trump announces for 2024 before Election Day 2022? And doesn't that accentuate the Trumpiness of the Republican Party? So that's sort of a variable out there that isn't yet factored in.
That is one of the reasons I think that what's going to accelerate between now and November is likelier to be the extremist Trumpism view of the identity of the Republican Party. That's likely to go up, not down, I think. And one of them would obviously be Trump announcing. And do
you think he will?
I mean, whether it's in his mind you can't indict me if I'm running or whatever, whatever the argument may be. It may depend who's whispering in his ear when. But no, I can't see him not announcing sometime between now and November. But
and I don't think it would be foolish. I mean, everyone sort of talks about it. The media is like, well, no one ever does that. Why would he do that? But if you're Trump, A, there's the sort of indictment issue. B, he looks at the current poll. He's at 49. DeSantis is at 25 or something like that. You figure that's not going to get better for Trump. I mean, Trump has an interest, I think, in freezing the field as much as he can, and in a way forcing the choice earlier instead of allowing another 6 months of erosion of support for him among Republican elites, especially, if not maybe the Republican base. But so I think it's not irrational. I mean, given that Trump only cares about Trump, he doesn't care about like how well Republicans are going to do in 2022. It's not irrational for him to announce a Labor Day or something.
No, I think that's right. I would expect him to. But but if he doesn't, okay, here's the other part of that, right? That if you think about it, look, it was easy in 2021 with elections in New Jersey and Virginia to say to Donald Trump, there's 48 other places you can go. We'll have big rallies, people can show up, and it'll be great. But just don't go to Virginia, please, right? And it worked. Okay,
and it was a gubernatorial, and it was not a federal election.
Yeah,
it was a gubernatorial election.
Right. But, okay, you're going to, yeah. So where's he going to be for the next 4 or 5 months, right? And where could he go that isn't Nevada, Ohio? In some of those places he may do some good, but it's going to exacerbate, and he's going to say things and do things that are just going to, again, he's back, right? He's rallies every week. No, I just think whether he announces or not, I certainly think announcing would spur this, but I'm pretty sure that we can count on him not being quiet, and like in Georgia, and like I said, some of that may work for some of these candidates. In the end, though, with what the courts, that's what I'm saying, it starts to all add up, and again to what January 6th committee is finding, and what we'll learn, potentially learn here in the next few weeks or month. I think all that adds up to when he's out there, it just makes it clear that what the choice really, it makes it, if he's out there that way, is it really a referendum on Biden, or does it again start to make this a choice election, which is what I think it's going to be. It's going to be a choice in districts, and if there's a referendum, it may be, the referendum choice may be MAGA versus a Biden-led Democratic Party. That's the choice. That's a different one than this is just a referendum on Biden, and he's done, he's responsible for inflation and all these bad things that have happened to you, which I'm sure they will make that case. And I think, it's a problem going to be, particularly if it doesn't sort of start to decline between now and November. But I still think it's likelier to be a much closer election and much more a choice election, not a referendum on just the president.
Do you think what happens to Liz Cheney on August 16th in Wyoming could be of import beyond that it's important for Liz Cheney? I mean, is it sort of a signal in a way to wavering Republican, ex-Republican voters who didn't vote for Trump but would kind of like to return to the Republicans, that it's still Trump's party, or is it just one congressional race in a state that's kind of far away from a lot of people?
Well, no, I mean, I think the hearings have made it, I think made her, a symbol of where the party could be versus where it seems to be going. And so in a much bigger way than if the hearings hadn't happened and she hadn't been as strong and as, I think, pretty incredible as she has been. And so, yeah, you'd hope that there are enough pro-democracy, just pro-Constitution Americans in Wyoming, whether independent Democrats or Republicans, who would support her in cross parties, even if they had to in that primary. But hope against hope, I just don't know if that's possible. If it doesn't happen, then yeah, I think it's another signal to just how far off the rails the Republican Party is going. When Liz Cheney is a rhino, I mean, it just, I just think that again goes to another event that will signal to everybody that this is how far off the rails the Republican Party with MAGA and Trumpism has gone. And I think will be, I think that's going to be a very important moment. I mean, I hope she survives it. And as a progressive Democrat who just believes we should have two parties that believe in our democracy and fight for it. But one isn't right now. And if she loses, I think it's going to be more clear.
Yeah, I think people haven't really thought about both the Cheney race, but maybe even more importantly, of course, a possible Trump announcement and how that affects the dynamic. I think you're right. If he's campaigning anyway, it's sort of, and he's ahead of the polls, it's a little hard to just, it becomes partly about Trump. But I just think if he's running, it really focuses people on, gee, the people we elect this time will have something to say about, over the character of the party over the next 2 years, even about Election Day 2024. It just brings all that stuff back in a much bigger way, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it's just one last thing on the Liz Cheney thing, which is pretty astounding. I think people have it's happened kind of gradually, her emergence to such a central place in our public debate. And I think actually people have not focused enough on the fact that, it's what Speaker Pelosi must have done to convince all these Democrats that, you know what, Liz Cheney is going to be the main face of this committee. I mean, with all due respect to Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin, who I think probably went along and did go along and, swallowed hard in some cases, or maybe they just thought country first, no problem. But the degree to which Pelosi has sort of insisted on that, when it wasn't obvious, that you could imagine her appointing, Cheney and Kinzinger to the committee.
Sure.
But then being very, look, you're one of 9 or 7 or whatever they are, and, you get your turn, but you're not going to be like the center of everything. I mean, that wouldn't have been crazy if Pelosi, and undoubtedly her party institutionally was pushing in that direction. And I think she deserves credit, if that's, for me it's credit, maybe others it would be blame, I guess, for just elevating Cheney so much. And that is, don't you think, really increased the effect, the impact of the committee pretty significantly. And it wasn't inevitable, is all I'm saying. It wasn't obvious a year ago, even when Cheney broke from Trump and from the Republicans and from the lead, got kicked out of leadership and said she'd be on the committee. It wasn't obvious she'd be this central to the whole.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think beyond that, then the committee and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and the others just, making it. I don't think there's been a Democratic voice as somebody who's testified in public or been put, tape of them being put forward. It's all been right. Trump and Republican. No, but I think that was in a lot of ways, it's what's sort of moved the bar a little bit, I think, on this, is that it's Republicans, it's Trump supporters, it's Trump loyalists that are and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, exactly what you said, putting them front and center, and then making it without a whole lot of speechifying by any of the members. It's been a little, maybe even my taste was a little too much, but remarkably
right.
little, given they're all politicians and that stuff. But I really think they've done an incredible job in how Nancy Pelosi set this up, and then let them, or help them get to where they're the means that they're doing this, has been really instrumental in I think giving the people that need to hear this, who don't want to hear it, who are going to try to avoid it, it's the best way to try to get this information out there. I think they've done an excellent job. Pretty
unusual discipline for any day and age, perhaps, and sort of impressive. I mean, just final point on this. I was just thinking about this the other day. Has any, in our lifetime, I don't know, modern history, has any member of Congress, member of the House, who's not the Speaker, basically, who's not the Speaker, I mean, been as important, as prominent, as central to sort of our public debate as Liz Cheney? It's a very unusual moment in American politics, and I don't quite know where she goes. She wouldn't think she would have much of a future in the current Republican Party, but she remains quite conservative, so not much of a future in the Democratic Party. God knows what independent efforts and all that. But I am struck that we sort of, again, it's happened gradually. So everyone said, well, of course, Liz Cheney this, Liz Cheney that. But I mean, when has that ever happened before? When have we ever been talking about a backbench, what she really is, member of Congress? I mean,
No, never. And particularly, I think, even with, I think even if, so many Democrats and independent, so many people, I think, have gained a respect for her independence and courage, that would never expect that. It's Howard Dean's campaign against Bush Cheney. And her dad. Oh my gosh!
Yes, you ran that just to remind the young people watching who were 4 years old at the time or something. Yes, this was your campaign, right?
But I'm saying, I never in a million years thought I'd be sitting here saying, "Hey, I hope people in Wyoming will vote for Liz Cheney." No, but that's more again because I think she's just shown in a party where there's been so much cowardice, I think, of people who could have said something and didn't. Her standing the way she has and conducting herself the way she has. I mean, not being, and taking whatever lumps come her way. I think I can't think of. I agree with you. I can't think of anybody who emerged like that from within the House in a way that now is a national figure. I agree with you. I don't know, where that goes. Maybe. I do think the interesting thing, because people talk about, well, what about a third party or some other, and I've looked at that. I looked at it in 16. I looked at it in 2020, and every time you do, it's really fascinating. But a lot of like the suburban women, Republicans, and people like that who when faced with a Trump versus Biden choice, literally spit the word Democrat out like it was poison, but said, "No, I'm going to vote for Biden. I'm going to vote Democrat for the first time in my life." And we're like just shook that they were even thinking that. When given a third person, they would go for the third person, almost no matter who it was, as a sort of escape valve. And so as I know people talk about, maybe she'll do that. I'm a little bit. It's too early to even know, but I'm not sure it would be a help. I mean, it would be a dangerous thing. You can't count on it. There's unintended consequences that would have to be thought out. But I mean, I certainly think she's emerged in a way. Look. I think and I've said this. Look, this has got to be Democrats, Independents, Republicans coming together who are pro-democracy, who stand by the Constitution, and look, we're a long way off from 2024, and I wouldn't put it past her emerging in a cabinet position or something. I don't mean because of the job she's doing, but I'm just saying I think we need to start signaling that we can work together, that there's a way for that to happen. I mean, that's probably going too far in terms of being reality. But I mean, but I'm saying I think we as Democrats have to reach. I'm really also getting, these people who say like, to hell with Adam Kinzinger and Cheney. They're the people who got us. All you Republicans got us here. No, right now, man, we gotta if we can't pull together and reach across to the people who are standing up courageously for the democracy, you can't push people away. We got to try to bring them in and work together on things. I think she could be very important in helping solve some big issue or something. So I think it's good that she's emerged the way she has.
I mean, and whether, who knows what will happen, but I want to ask you about the Democrats, and we just started to discuss, but I mean, the other thing with Cheney, you ran the Dean campaign, which almost won in 2003 and 4. If you had said, if we had been talking in July of 2002, shortly after 9/11, yeah, and Democrats were mostly planning, or many of them planning to vote for the war in Iraq, actually, and I mean, the notion that he would have been a credible Democrat candidate in the Democratic primary against the famous people who were running, Gephardt,
sure,
and Lieberman, who'd been the vice presidential nominee last time, and Kerry, seemed very low, as you know better than anyone. It was very far-fetched and a long shot. I don't think Liz Cheney will be the Republican nominee in 24, no, against a Trumpy party, a MAGA-ish party, and a party that at its best wants, that may not want Trump, but doesn't want people who've taken on Trump as Liz Cheney has. Having said all that, I don't think it's out of the question that she runs as a Republican and gets some real votes. I mean, I don't think it's, Joe Walsh and Bill Weld again getting a total of 11%. So, that would also be interesting as a kind of wild card for 24. But anyway, let me ask you.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that I'm just saying what I was saying, I didn't mean to get into, what in the future. She's got a future.
Yeah. No, I think
and I just don't know how how it
and the different
out.
parts of the future could fit together in funny ways. You want as a Democrat, a Republican, but then you end up with a Democratic administration.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start. So, your most recent emergency podcast on that Trippi show was, in fact, you've been quoted some on the 2022 thing, and I think we've discussed it, I hope, pretty comprehensively, and I think, thought-provokingly. But let's talk about what you said, because you were worried about the Democrats, and so even if you have a short-term, somewhat optimistic view of how they might do because of the Republican extremism in 22, I don't think you think either party's in great shape, and particularly, what's your concern about the Democrats? What worries you the most? How much have they fixed or not fixed that you already saw as a problem in 2020 and 2021?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's this sort of progressive centrist fight. It's literally I was part of this when working for Ted Kennedy in 1979, 1980, where we took Carter on. That got us, from a Democratic perspective, got us 8 years of Reagan and 4 years of Herbert Walker Bush. So
and a Republican Senate in 1980 for the first time.
Yeah.
A quarter century.
Exactly. And then, but if you look at Republicans, Reagan challenging Ford in 76. I know I'm dating myself here, but this has happened, LBJ in 68. I mean, it's never, nothing good has ever come out of it. I mean, the other party always wins. And to be even thinking about that, with the specter of Donald Trump running for running again, I mean, running for another term, is just like wrong question, wrong time, guys. I mean, I just think that's but there are elements that are, that pushing, he's not doing enough, Biden's not taking bold action. A lot of this is like, learn to count, like, because, you can't take bold action with a Senate that is tied with Harris breaking the tie. Bold action that we got to take is electing a few more, from a Democratic perspective, electing a few more Democrats in the Senate would help. To be, if you want to codify Roe v. Wade or any of these things, that's what it's going to take. I think. Look, my view right now is democracy's on the ballot in 2022. It is. We're talking about 139 members of the House, Republican members of the House, voted to not certify Joe Biden. If you want to give those people a majority and believe that they'll certify, that they won't certify Trump. In fact, I think, by the way, if they take the House back, if Trump hasn't announced, he will the next day, because he'll know they'll certify the loser. He'll be positive there's no way he can lose. So I just think that.
But is your point that they should support Biden for now, but keep open the question of who the nominee would be in 24? Or do you think they need to sort of, I mean, are you making a statement about the 24 nomination, or a statement about the next 4 months in terms of the sniping, the discontent, that everyone has to vent, their own views about how much they're unhappy they are with Joe Manchin or whatever,
Well, I think both. I mean, I think you have to, for now, I mean, for particularly the next 4 months, it's just crazy to even do any, this is, we have to be unified. It's what I said. If you're sitting there and you realize you have to have Republicans, Democrats, and independents in a pro-democracy coalition pulling together with everything they've got to stop this extremist and authoritarian attack on our democracy, that you have to do that. I'm not talking about the average person on the street who may not, who still, what are you talking about? I'm talking about, people who understand what's really happening with these law changes and things like that. No, you got to stay unified. And if you can't, so how could you have a split in your party? How can you have, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Right now, we've all got to pull together. And if we can't, as a party, do that, how can we expect other Republicans and independents
But aren't
to
they,
join
I mean,
us?
so wouldn't the counter argument be, aren't they pulling together okay? There's not like, Democrats aren't going around the country saying, don't vote against, no moderate is going around saying Fetterman beat Connerland, Pennsylvania.
No.
So don't vote for Fetterman. And to be fair, very few AOC supporters are going around saying some moderate won the nomination somewhere else, so you shouldn't vote for him or her for. So
I think a lot of it's press speculation, right? I mean, it's like, Gavin Newsom did this, it must be bad for Biden or whatever. The thing is, and so I'm more. But then I make the case long term. The one thing I know is, look, and I don't know which way this will go, but I'll say it this way: Joe Biden's presidency going into 2024 is either going to be a successful presidency or a dismal one, right? I mean, it's the way it's likely to be. All these people talk about, well, we need somebody else. We need to, okay, fine. If it's a
generational change, I myself am okay. So we should argue about this. Okay, so
no. But what I'm saying is, if it's a successful presidency. And there could be many things that can happen, right? Inflation becomes under control, whatever. If it's a successful presidency, the nominee will matter in 2024. If it's a dismal one, who wants to be Walter Mondale? Let's,
right.
So what I'm trying to say is you want to do whatever we can as a party to make his presidency successful. That's what everybody should be doing. That means what's important in democracy? What's important in democracy, which we've gotten away from, is compromise. Well, if you can't compromise within the party,
right?
This is where I think the Democratic Party is hurt itself because the wings won't. Debating whether it should be a $3.1 trillion package or a 2.8, it's not big enough, it's not bold enough. Instead of just coming to agreement and passing something that all Democrats could agree on early, and we said we argue about it for 6 months. I think that hasn't helped.
How much? Yeah, I want to ask you. Well, so my slight counter argument on the Biden thing is that, which we should discuss after November, maybe would be interesting, isn't there a scenario? Maybe this is too clever by half. Isn't it more likely that Biden is a successful one-term president than a successful president who says, I want to run for re-election at age 82? Is it inconceivable in American politics? I agree that there are not many examples of people saying this. I remember arguing in the Bush White House in 91, the first Bush, that, in one meeting, maybe he shouldn't run for re-election. That might be, obviously it's his choice, but, he could be a successful one-term president who won the Cold War and passed a good budget deal and so forth. And it was like, no, that's very nice, Bill, but, let's be grown-ups here. If everyone wants to be reelected. But I kind of wonder if Biden said he wasn't running again, whether he wouldn't be a more successful one-term president than if everything is colored by is he running for re-election? Is he too old? But that's my own slight, variant.
I don't disagree with that, but my point would be, is this a successful presidency? What are we all doing to make it a successful presidency?
I take that point. So that's a separate.
Right? No. And then I would take that to the next step. Is he likelier to say, "Gosh, I've been a successful president. I should. It's time for new blood. New blood.
That happens sometimes, right? You win your 21st Grand Slam tournament or something, and then you retire at the top of your game, the Ted Williams thing or whatever. I don't know.
So what I'm saying is, if you're somebody who's like for new blood, I'm saying that the best thing you could do is to help the administration be successful. Work to come to terms with other people, that you wouldn't normally compromise with, but get some things done, make it a successful presidency. We've got a far better, again, because of what's at stake in 2024, particularly if Trump is running, we've got a far better chance for the democracy, let alone for the party, of coming up with the right answer in 2024 if Biden's a successful president. Can you imagine? Let's go the other way. It's an unsuccessful presidency. You want new blood. Trump is, or you're a progressive. You want really big, progressive, bold ideas, and Trump's the nominee on the other side, and we're trying to dig out of. This is what I'm saying. This is how you get what I'm terrified of, Donald
Yeah.
Trump being in the White House again. I think that's crazy. I understand all these impulses, by the way. We've had them in both parties forever. Within the parties, the wings all fighting. I just think right now, man, it's and again, this goes beyond the party. It's unity within the Democratic Party, but bringing people in.
Which fight do you think sort of has hurt or is hurting the most? That is, or which set of fights? I mean, when you were on in September, you were very worried about the Build Back Better fight and the foolishness of giving voters the impression, leaving aside the way the substance of these competing bills, that you just can't govern and that it's got to be this size and not that size. It just looks incompetent and sort of chaotic and whatever. I think when Carville was on this conversation, I can't remember, it was a little before or after, he was like a little more, I mean, he wasn't crazy about that, but he was a little more alarmed by looking like the Amherst Faculty Club, as he put it, and woke and kind of looking, unconcerned with, like every school that's named after George Washington's name should be changed and all that kind of stuff. I mean, does the cultural stuff matter more? Or does the sort of economic indecision of the president and looking at a touch on inflation matter more? I mean, if you could sort of fix one, if you could tell the Democrats, they're not, as you said earlier, they're not going to do what you want them to do. They're going to say what they think anyway, I suppose. But what kind of unity matters the most? Is it the cultural signals? Is it the actual governing in Congress and looking like they are unified, know what they're doing? I guess
I'd say both of those things. I mean, I think we've done not a good job at either. And I think that the one thing that Biden had was that he could competently govern the House and the Senate. I mean, through the House and the Senate. And I think the party in having all those arguments. I mean, it's sort of really important arguments. I got it. What's going to be in here, and that one's not bold enough. I can't vote for that. When you think about it, here's Donald Trump. Compare that to Trump. Trump says we're building a 50,000-foot wall. Okay, if he had said that, the entire party would have said, how high? Okay. Right? So this is like, and we get over there, Biden, who knows the Senate, knows the House, is much more competent than Trump would ever be, I mean, just not even on the same level. We're a party who's doing like, no, I can't vote for that. I want to vote for this. Takes us like months and months and months. And we're talking about trillions of dollars and maybe this. I think we lost the competence battle. By the way, maybe
Afghanistan coincided with that too. Yeah, so there comes two or three things going out at once there in that late summer, early fall of 2021.
Right, and so I think the first thing is one of the things is, but that's what I mean. So even when they're doing competent and doing a very competent job on a lot of different issues, in my view, we kind of lost that edge that we had there because of the way Democrats were arguing about everything, and plus some of the things. The other thing I think was setting, it didn't learn from the mission accomplished with W. There were a lot of like goal settings that that we're like, why are we doing that? But we did it. But no, I think the bigger one, the one that has more impact in an individual district or state, is the cultural stuff. I mean, if you get defund the police, had a lot to do, I think, with why it sort of makes the point too. That turned out to be an election in which both a referendum on Donald Trump, the 2020 election, and a choice election at the local level, at the more local level. That's why I think Dems lost in a lot of these marginal places, because we were seen as, wanting to defund the police. I mean, not fair to most of the candidates, because you point out, because you couldn't. The last guy on the planet who wanted to defund the police was a prosecutor who took on the Klan in Alabama, Doug Jones, but you couldn't. It didn't matter. You're a Democrat who wants to defund the police. So I think, and by the way, Republicans are really, and Trump in particular, is very good at exploiting those cultural mistakes or cultural, whatever you want to, because we have a tendency to walk right into them. It's like, critical race theory, our answer is, well, it's not taught in schools, instead of like, literally like trying to engage a little bit. It's like Obama and the birther thing, like, Democrats tend to roll their eyes and go like, no one will believe that he was born in Kenya until 2 years later. Turns out you got to, right. Because the mantra's been there. The one thing I think still that I worry about with the democracy, period, is the outrage machine that Fox News, Breitbart, OAN, Newsmax has built out there that just repeats, and how little, I mean, the bulwark, there's different things that are happening, but not with billions of dollars of investment like those that are just pro-democracy. Forget about partisanship or anything like that, but are just like defending against the disinfo and trying to get viewpoints out there. That's not going to be CNN or MSNBC. So part of what I'm worried about, not just as a party, but as a country, is when you have billions being spent to create this outrage machine, which I think has a lot to do with Biden's low ratings and how cultural issues are outrages is echoed and amplified, and there's no real countervailing force. There's not the presidency itself in our fragmented media, and so these like I said, the bulwark. Midas Touch, Lincoln Project. There's all kinds of groups out there trying to do something, but we cannot knock down that amplified machine that they've built. And I'm really worried about that going into 2022 and 2024, because as I've said, the repeated lie will defeat the unrepeated truth every time, and I think that's what we're up against.
I mean, someone used the phrase to me yesterday that was really good, that he and I were agreeing that you talk to a lot of Democrats on the Hill, moderate Democrats, and they're pretty moderate, and they're pretty unhappy about the left, and they're pretty willing to say, I don't agree with that, I don't agree with this, I'm not pushing that. But as my friend put it, there's a certain lack of they're sane, there's a lot of sanity, some sanity, but they're not aggressive in their sanity. They're not willing to take on the left. So the voters don't get the sense. The voters think, well, there are these decent Democrats probably, but they're kind of intimidated by the left, by the progressives, and the real energy in the party's on the left. And that's why that defund the police stuff, it's not just that you don't, if you don't say defund the police as a Democrat running for Congress, but you don't actually aggressively distance yourself from it, you get kind of dragged along. And I don't quite understand why, as I say, this is a friend of the moderates in the Democratic Party, I don't understand why they're not a little more aggressive in selling their moderation against the left,
But, well, look, I think it's because of the polarization in both parties, right, in the country. It's the same reason, frankly, that I think quite a few people who I normally would have said, gosh, they're saying there's no tangible reason they would be a Trump MAGA person. Why? Because they need, when you're in a 50-50 situation, you can't afford to tick off, whether it's 30% of your party or 6% of your party, you can't afford to lose that 6% or that 30%. Right now, I'd say, look, there's a much bigger group in the Republican Party, the MAGA contingent, that is, I think, extreme and out of step with a lot of the ideals of the American people, where common ground where the American people could be. But if you're in one of these, if you were in this world where it's 50-50 and it's up or down, just as you get few Adam Kinzingers and Liz Cheney's willing to, particularly when it's like 30, 35, maybe even more percent of your party. I think it's the same mechanism that creates this problem in the Democratic Party, not anywhere near as big a contingent or even off the rails. In a lot of ways, it's how they say things, not what they're saying, which is where we got into with defund the police. But that's much bigger. That's another podcast or another conversation. Excuse me. But what I think is that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying, like the party's got to come together and find that common ground. I don't mean to give up, what you're arguing for. I'm talking about, but if the Democratic Party starts to go the way of the Republican Party went, in other words, we're now you start to develop an extreme wing that's really tearing, pulling people in primaries and stuff, which hasn't happened. We have the fights occasionally, with a real progressive, with Bernie and Biden, it's and Hillary and Bernie, but it's not an unreasonable kind of us or them kind of fight within our party. It can get angry at times. But yeah, I think we got to guard against it because that's where. But I think that's part of why they don't.
Yeah.
Because if you start lashing out, then that just pulls people apart. So you
right,
wanna,
I guess,
and they're pull them together. It's a real in this democracy. That's why it's kind of a problem where if you don't want to take out a baseball bat and swing away and say that you're crazy because you want to try to pull people together and the Democratic Party still has an element of that. There are plenty of elements of that within the Republican, but not nearly enough given the way the extreme elements have taken over, and that's part of the problem here. How do we deal civilly with this stuff? Try to bring people together while you now look. There are people who have legitimate reasons. They want to fight, man. They want a fighter. They want to, they want somebody who's going to go toe to toe with Trump and punch away. I'm not sure that's good for. I understand it's just, but it's a tough place to. They're not wrong, by the way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the question is whether you can be a fighter and sort of also distance yourself fairly firmly from the left. I think other presidents have done, FDR did that in a way. Sort of Truman, you can be pretty tough on the Republicans while making clear you're not in bed with some part of you, and not just in bed with, but you're affirmatively disagreeing with some part of your party that A, you do disagree with, and B, that is actually damaging. I'd say there's a slight lack. I understand that for the next 3 months, probably this is not going to be manifest, but there's a slight lack of entrepreneurship on the center of among the moderates, the Democratic Party, which there isn't on the left. And whatever you think of the left, they're pretty entrepreneurial. Ironically, you might say AOC and those people are very shrewd about how they maximize their own power. And the Democrats are sort of like, gee, I wish they wouldn't do that, the moderate Democrats I talk to, and it's kind of bad. And I said, well, maybe you should push back a little on it. Well, but you don't want to pick a fight, and the progressives are a real pain to have on your case, and so forth.
I still think it gets back to look at the 50-50 Senate, though. You can't lose Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And you can't lose Manchin.
Which is a reason why it's probably not members of Congress who actually are the best at doing this. It's probably a governor or someone on the outside who can say, I've just governed in this way, and I'm not, I'm Jared Polis, I'm making this up, but I'm Jared Polis in Colorado, and I'm not going with some left-wing socialism. I'm proud that we've created X number of businesses or jobs or something in Colorado.
No, I totally agree. I'm just saying I think part of it, what I'm saying is I think part of the disease here is how polarized and how close things are that, I don't think the MAGA folks give a damn about who they throw out of the party or whatever. I think Democrats are like, I don't want to throw anybody out of the party. Right. I think AOC, I don't agree with her on stuff, but she represents her district. I don't want to. We're not purging them, and that's what I mean. It's kind of like a penalty that you pay because you don't want to. Right. We're more diverse or whatever you want to call it.
But at the presidential level, if you think, I was thinking about this the other day, Clinton distanced himself, of course, from a little bit from the left. George W. Bush, everyone's forgotten this, distanced himself from the right, from Buchanan and the compassionate conservatism stuff, which probably gave him a ladder to win very narrowly in 2000. And President Obama, for all that he was a little more, I'd say, on the left, certainly on the war, he was picking up in a way that Dean, Mantle to some degree against Clinton. But he also famously gave that speech in 2020, his most famous speech ever before he was nominated, I guess, before his acceptance speech, was the 2004 convention speech, which was, there's no red America, there's no blue America, and I'm a kind of, I want to bring people together. And I think the degree to which, so I think the presidential imperatives for the Democrats, and that was, of course, Biden in 2020. So the presidential imperatives are a little different from, being a member of Congress who wants to pick a fight with some other member and split the conference. So this is why often governors and outsiders become the presidential nominees. And
it's exactly why it's very few, senators, I think, too, Kennedy and Obama.
Yeah. Well, we need to get through 2022 first, and I think it's been very interesting. We'll see how it turns out, but I think you really explained the contrarian view, which I happen to agree with, against what remains. I think the conventional wisdom has eroded a little over the last 2-3 weeks in the light of polling and sort of reality about the wave and the tsunami and all, but it remains pretty dominant. But I think your formulation that we might have a red mirage rather than a red wave is a very interesting one. So we'll see what happens in 4 months, and then we'll get together after the election and really solve the problem in the next 2 years. Is that okay?
Yeah. I love doing it. It's always good talking to you, Bill.
It was great talking to you, Joe. So Joe Trippi, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you all for joining us on Conversations.